This is Pinyin in a Week. I'm your instructor, Betty, with YesLingo.com. Lesson 6, Tones. You're almost done learning everything there is to know about Mandarin, and we've already talked about all of the initials and finals, so today we're going to learn the third component of Pinyin, which is the tone. As we've already learned, besides the initial and the final, there is a tone component to every Chinese syllable. When reading and writing Pinyin, the tone is always located above the central vowel in the Pinyin. There are a total of 5 tones, and they are represented by different symbols. This word, ma, which means horse, has the tone that looks like a little V. Do you see it? And this happens to be the third tone. Also, something to note is that it's located right above the vowel. See? Okay, very good. As I mentioned earlier, there are a total of 5 tones in Mandarin, and you can see the 5 tones here. They are simply called the first, second, third, fourth, and neutral tone. I know, whoever made these names was really creative, wasn't he? Anyways, the first tone is represented by a little dash above the vowel. Incidentally, the sound of the first tone is also relatively flat. While we're learning all of the finals, everything that we pronounced was in the first tone. The second tone is represented by a short upward dash. And this can help you remember that second tone words all rise in tone. The third tone symbol looks like a little letter V, and this indicates that third tone words first drop in tone and then rise back up again. The fourth tone is a short downward dash, and incidentally, fourth tone words all go down in tone. And finally, the fifth tone, or neutral tone, is not represented by any symbol. And fifth tone words usually are pronounced rather gently, without too much force. Hopefully, you'll be able to recognize that the direction of the tone symbol helps to tell us the rise and fall of our voice when we're saying the words out loud. What's interesting is that oftentimes 2 characters with the exact same spelling but different tone yields 2 completely different words. We'll explore this in a bit more detail. Here are 5 Chinese characters that all have the exact same pinyin look. They are all MA, 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 and MA. The only thing that distinguishes them is their tone. As a result, all 5 of these characters are 5 different words with 5 distinct meanings. Now, there are several things to take away from this chart. Notice that the tones are all written as symbols over the central vowel. And if there is no tone symbol, as in this case, then it's the 5th tone, or the neutral tone. And also, we can look at this direction column. These arrows show you what type of tone your voice should take. Let's look at the first tone. See how it's a rather high, steady tone? So it should read like ma, ma. The second one is a rising tone. It should sound like this. Ma, ma. The third tone actually goes down and then rises back up. It'll sound like this. Ma, ma. And the fourth tone is quite a strong downward tone. Ma, ma. And finally, the neutral tone is pretty much the unstressed word. Ma, ma. So we get ma, 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 ma. See that? Okay, we're going to look at these words one by one. Let's take a look at the first word on the list that we just looked at. This word is ma, and it means mother. Notice that the symbol for the first tone is this small dash over the central vowel, and the first tone, like I mentioned, is a high, even, and constant tone. So imagine there's this plane flying at a constant high altitude in the air, and you say the sound in a high, almost sing-song-like style, like this. Ma. Let's try reading all of these together, starting with ma. Ma, fa, he, ji. So this should all sound really familiar to you because when we were learning all of the vowels, everything we said was in the first tone. It's going to change a little when we get to the second tone. So the next word on our list was ma, this word right here. And it's basically the word for marijuana or hemp. And it's the same syllable as the previous word we just learned, except that it takes on the second tone. You can see that the symbol for the second tone is a small upward accent above the central vowel, and this indicates that the second tone is a rising tone. So you can think of an airplane taking off and then gaining altitude. Similarly, the second tone slowly rises and gets stronger. Ma, ma. Imagine if you just heard something really surprising. What would your response be? You might say something like, what? That's exactly the rising tone of the second tone, like this. What? Let's read several of these syllables together with the second tone, starting with this one. Ma, fa, he, ji. Very good job. Are you ready to move on? Okay, we're going to talk about the third tone. The next word on the list was ma, and this means horse. Again, same spelling, just different tone. In this case, it's the third tone. And see how the symbol for the third tone is a small V-shaped symbol above the central vowel? This should indicate to you that the third tone first falls and then rises. Like the airplane that is experiencing turbulence might slightly drop in altitude and then go back to its original altitude. It's the same idea. Except imagine your voice is doing this, slightly going lower, fading, and then coming up higher and a bit louder. Ma. Now this is probably the most difficult tone to pronounce, so let's try using an English analogy. Imagine your friend just told you he has $1 billion, and you're obviously suspicious because your friend actually has no job, so you might ask him, you do? You do? That falling and then rising pitch is exactly what we're looking for, like this. You do? Ma. Let's read these third tone syllables together. Ma, fa, lian, ji. Get it? Okay, just read them a couple times until it slowly starts to sink in. Now we're on to the fourth tone. The word we're looking at here is this one, ma, and it means to curse or to yell at somebody. Let's look at the symbol for the fourth tone. See how it's this little downward accent above the central vowel? Again, it's the visual representation of the actual tone. It's a quickly falling and fading tone. Ma. It's like if our plane is going to do a crash landing, it quickly goes from a high altitude down to the ground, and your voice does the same thing. It starts off high and then quickly falls and fades. Ma. Imagine if you're in the middle of something and your annoying sibling comes over to ask you a question. You might, in a very flustered tone, respond with, what? That is exactly the quickly falling tone we're looking for, like this. What? Ma. And here are some examples of fourth tone syllables. Let's read them together. Ma, hua, xia, xie. Very good. Now for the fifth tone, it's a neutral tone, so it's unstressed and it's not represented by any symbol. So if you ever see a pinyin without any symbol over the vowel, it means that it's taking on the neutral tone. And it's most often used when asking a question because there are interrogative particles that take on the neutral tone, such as this one, ma, ma. It's short, unstressed, and ends more or less where the previous syllable ended, like this, mama. In the case of mother, it's mama. It's first tone, then neutral tone, mama. See the difference? Mama. Other tones will take on the neutral tone under special circumstances as well. Let's read these two neutral tones together. Ma, ba. All right, very good. So we've just finished the introduction to the tone. Let's review the 5 tones together again. The first one is a high-pitched, flat tone. It's symbolized by a small dash over the central vowel. Ma. Let's say you have a friend named Mike. If you were going to call Mike in for dinner, you might say, Mike. That's the first tone. Ma. The second tone is a rising tone and it gets stronger. It's symbolized by an upward accent over the central vowel. Ma. Ma. Say you happen to run into your friend Mike at the shopping mall. When you see him, you'll be surprised, and you might say, Mike? That's the second tone. Ma. The third tone is a falling and then rising tone, and it's symbolized by a small V shape over the central vowel. Ma. So say you're really angry that Mike did something, and you're going to get ready to scold him. Maybe you'll say, Mike. That's the third tone. Ma. The fourth tone is a short, quickly falling and fading tone, and it's symbolized by a downward accent over the central vowel. Ma. So let's imagine Mike is completely ignoring you, and it's really starting to get on your nerves. You could get his attention by saying, Mike. That's the fourth tone. Ma. And finally, the neutral tone is just short and unstressed. And there are several special rules we'll need to follow for the neutral tones, and we'll go over these in the next lesson.